Hi.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
So, should I assume none of you have read Ottessa's book or stories, or should I? No, a lot of you have read them? Okay, I'll just take it from the top. The first story in the book is called Bettering Myself, and it's about a woman who's so disconnected from her feelings that she doesn't even know she's lonely. Do you think most people are not aware of what's really happening to them emotionally on a deep level?
Well, I don't know about most people. I think I've spent a lot of time having no fucking idea what I've been thinking or feeling, just in the surface ego feeling world. And I think that character has been suffering from that and has been drinking over a lot of her reality. I wrote that story a long time ago, and I probably spent the longest time writing that story than any other story in the collection. It was pretty personal when I wrote it, although I don't think I can really relate to her anymore.
What year did you write it?
I wrote that, actually, I had just moved to LA, so it was 2013.
Do you like the character?
Yeah, I love her. I think she's funny, and I mean, I love all of them. Yeah, what do you
love
like?
all of them?
Yeah, I love all of them. What do you like her?
I'm worried about her.
Yeah, I'm worried about her too.
Yeah. She's, well, I guess a question that came up when I read it was, do people have to shove down what's really happening in themselves to function in society?
Yes.
The answer is yes to that.
I don't know. I mean, I can't really answer for everybody.
Yeah. Answer for yourself, yeah.
Do I have to shove everything down in order to function in society?
We have to control a lot of ourselves in order to function in society.
Yeah, I think that's what society is.
Wouldn't life be more interesting if everybody revealed everything all the time?
Yeah, we'd probably be like fucking and killing each other all the time.
That sounds okay. To me, that story was also about the normalization of horror. It's
How so?
Her life is horrible, and it just goes from one kind of brutal, small experience to the next, but she doesn't bat an eye. It's like, this is just life.
I don't know. I think she does bat an eye. It starts off with so it's about this woman who works in a Ukrainian Catholic school, high school, in Astor Place in Manhattan, and she's pretty settled into her alcoholism. She has this younger boyfriend who seems really superficial and silly, and she doesn't seem to respect him much. And she has this ex-husband who now lives in Chicago. And the arc of the story sort of is like status quo with her life, and then her ex-husband calls because she's been harassing him over the phone for I don't know how many years, and he has some business trip planned, so he's coming to New York and wants to take her out, and he offers her money to stop calling and harassing him, and she takes it and then quits her job at the high school. So spoiler alert, but that's what happens. But I think like that moment where he's called her and they have this plan for dinner, she's hopeful about the future in her total delusion. Like, well, I don't know what she's expecting, but she goes shopping for herself and takes herself out to lunch and eats a salad for the first time in how many years, and it like sobers out a little bit, and says that she's bettering herself, and then it ends up being this kind of insulting disappointment when he just offers her money.
Yeah.
But in the end, like there is a little bit of redemption there.
What's the redemption?
Well, she decides to quit her job at the Catholic school and writes a letter of resignation, and then goes to deliver it, but the church is closed. So she's sitting there on the church steps, sort of doing nothing. I don't know, maybe that isn't redemption, but
If you're sitting on the stairs of a church, there's a possibility of redemption.
well, the door is closed and she can't resign.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, this story also raised for me the issue of resignation, that I thought to myself, are most people just resigned to their lives? Like, it's not what I wanted, I don't like this part, I don't like that part, but I'm tired, or I don't think I can change it, so I'm just going to live it out this way. Do you think most people have sort of resigned themselves to aspects of their lives?
I think we have to. We have to at least accept certain aspects of our lives and deal with them. But everybody I know is unhappy.
Can you elaborate on
I mean,
that?
like, everybody I know has some like essential unhappiness that they're quarreling with, and they're trying to figure it out, and they think they found the solution, and then there are phone calls be like, oh, I found the solution, and then a couple months later that's fallen apart, and there's the disillusionment and self-loathing that happens when you've failed to make yourself happy. But I think that's just life and karma.
Yeah. You said most people are unhappy, and people seem to think they project onto something. Like in a couple of these stories, it's like men project onto women that they're going to be redeemed and their salvation lies in these women. Are those kind of scenarios always delusional?
I've spent most of my life feeling like they were. I mean, as soon as you're disappointed, whatever you had faith in becomes a disappointment, right?
Yeah.
So love fades.
Why?
I don't know.
That's one of
Woody
my great.
Allen.
That's one of my great. Why do people stop loving each other?
But I think people. Oh God, Christine. I don't know.
Come on, you can tell us that in 5 minutes or less. That's one of the great mysteries. It's like we meet someone and we are enchanted by them, and then cut to 3 years later and you're just annoyed by them. What happens?
God. Well, people change. I don't know. Love is mostly chemical, right?
Is that love?
Like, why does love exist? Isn't it just for survival?
That's a huge question. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Why love exists?
Like, if we didn't love each other, we would all be dead.
But then there's, in a lot of these stories, there's a very corrupted kind of love where people are projecting onto others. They attach themselves to others as kind of shortcuts to changing their own lives. That's not really love.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Okay. What's the difference between love and desire?
Well, I think a desire, at least in the way the noun is defined, can be fulfilled. I think love is something actually, like, it's an unattainable desire. It's something you were constantly wanting. But I don't know. I mean, it's a weird word, and I think we've fucked it up by now.
It still works, kind of.
I don't know. I mean, I think the love that I have for, like, I don't know, chocolate is really different from the love that I have for my niece, you know? But we use love. Oh, I love that. I love that meme or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
So you think the word's just been completely depleted of meaning?
I think by now, yeah.
Okay. One of the stories in this book, Mr. Wu, which the theme of this story for me was like shame and disgust and self-loathing. Where does self-loathing come from? Is that just built into us as people, or are we taught it by society, or do our parents lay it on us, or... These are the tough questions.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't think that we're born with self-loathing.
You don't?
But maybe if we have some sort of like deep, no, I think probably some of us are born with self-loathing. Yeah, because I've seen people who have lived lives perfectly loved and supported and pampered, and they still can't function. There's some kind of psychic thing that's amiss, and they don't want to be alive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think some people are born with self-loathing. I mean, I would believe that, but I do think that it's sort of a natural function of society to hate ourselves and each other a little bit. It builds a sense of like competition and the need to grow.
So it's, in that sense, it's a positive thing.
It could be.
Yeah. Would you say that the character that in Mr. Wu and in Bettering Myself are suffering spiritual crises?
I don't think that those characters have understood how to live on any kind of spiritual level yet. I think they're living on a really basic, like almost primordial level of just like the neurotic body and their responses to stimuli. I think they have some thoughts, but they're not really connected to God. Yeah.
Do you think that's part of what's plaguing them?
I think that's what plagues all of us.
Yeah, I interviewed Leonard Cohen once, and he made this great comment. He said that we all need something to hurl our prayers at. And yeah, I think that's true. Most of the characters in these books seem like they don't have any kind of spiritual anchor to anything. They have no connection to the divine or how to get there.
What about the last story?
The last story? Oh, wait, which one? What's that called? A Better Place. To me, that was one of the most troubling stories in the book. That, to me, was like a really dark fable, like a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the characters have
an avenue.
Faith in something.
That's true. Well, everybody in the book has faith in something, but it's usually misplaced faith. Like Mr. Wu has faith in the girl at the video arcade, and the guy in Britt Went. He has faith in this furniture redesigner, and yeah.
Is this interesting? I have no idea.
Okay, tell me about a book that changed you.
Oh, you know what? There's this book called Nigger by Dick Gregory, who was a comic, African-American in the 60s, and pretty radical. That was the first book that I read, and I read it when I was a kid. I grew up in a house with just tons of books that my parents didn't read. My mom was a hoarder, and she would just buy stacks of books at garage sales and stuff. And that book really shocked me because it was somebody writing about something extremely disturbing with levity and grace and absolute honesty. And he was just writing about what it was like to be African American in the United States.
Yeah.
And it made me laugh, and it hurt my feelings, and I couldn't believe that this was the experience of some people. And the title of the book was just Nigger, which is you couldn't believe it. And so that really changed me. It made me think that books could be powerful. I mean, it showed me that a book could be powerful and have some effect on me.
Yeah. Ideally, how should books function? I mean, does art have have specific things it should do?
I think for every project that I have, in the end, I see that there's been something very specific that I've been trying to do, but I'm not always conscious of it in the process. I think art has a lot of functions. What do you think?
I keep quoting people. Ingmar Bergman, who I didn't interview, once said that art lost its way when it ceased being a form of worship. And I kind of agree with that. I think it should be it should help you connect with the divine or some larger reality outside of yourself. So I think that's one of the things it should do. Yeah. Horrify. I guess it should horrify you too, because there's a lot in life that's horrifying.
And I think the kind of art that I like just makes me feel excited to be alive. Whether it's horrifying or placating or whatever, if I'm happy to experience it, then it's good.
So what was the last thing you saw that thrilled you, read or saw or heard?
Oh, I went to see the James Turrell Did I ever tell you about that? Going to see, what is it called? Rainfall or something? It's at Lockman. I think it's still there.
Well, there's the rain room.
Yeah, no.
Which isn't his piece, but there's a light environment.
Okay, so there's this installation at Lockmo where you have to make a reservation, and you go into this room, and there's this big pod set up on a platform, and a man in a lab coat takes you up the steps, as everything is very white and dim, and lays you on this bed and pushes you into this pod so that you're completely enclosed. And then you have earphones, and there's sort of like this 180 digital screen, and you can't really tell how far away it is. And it starts off, and it's just this pale blue light that's surrounding you, and it's quiet. And you're in there for about 10 minutes or so, and in that pale blue light that surrounds you, I initially totally freaked out. I was like, I'm trapped in here.
It sounds like an MRI to me.
No, it was a lot like that. I think it was supposed to be like that. I'm trapped in here. I don't exist. What the fuck is going on? And then it was just like, chill. I mean, it was a lot like being on drugs, where like you get high and you have to talk yourself into accepting your new state of mind. And then there's a lot of sounds and colors that start happening, and you just sort of ride it. But that was really wonderful. I mean, I didn't want it to end.
How long were you in there?
It was like under 10 minutes.
How long did it take you to get comfortable in there?
A couple minutes.
Yeah. Do some people ask to be let out? I bet.
Well, I went with a friend, and actually there are 2 levels that you can choose. You can choose the hard level or the soft level. And I went with a friend, and she chose the hard level. And after a couple minutes, they give you this thing to wear around your neck.
Like
with
a heart monitor?
Yeah, with an emergency button. And she pressed it and asked to be let out and switch to the soft level. So
what's happening in the hard level?
I mean, I think it was just way more intense. It was supposed to put you in a different, whatever, theta brain wave zone.
Yeah.
Don't ask me.
Yeah. Well, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, it was good.
Is all writing autobiographical?
No, I don't think so. I think fiction is.
Yeah.
I think fiction is essentially autobiography told through different scrims of imagination. But I mean, no, I don't think. I think like journalism, reportage isn't necessarily autobiography. I don't know.
That's true. Yeah. One of the amazing things about this book is how easily you go from a male perspective. Some are written from the point of view of a man, and others from a woman. Do you think there are fundamental differences in the way that men and women think, or not?
Well, I don't know, because I've never been a man.
But you've written as a man.
Yeah, but I've written as like assholes. Like I know what it feels like to be an asshole. You know.
You've written from. There's some good men in here. You wrote from the point of view of.
Well, there's an older man.
In No Place for Good People.
Yeah. So there's this one story about this older man who's widowed, or whatever, and retired, and takes this part-time volunteer position taking care of people who live in a facility for the mentally
retarded, right?
You're not supposed to use that word. Anyway, challenged people. And he seems really good-hearted, but there's something essentially off and misplaced and lonely about him that makes him actually kind of scary, I think.
Oh, you think? Because my impression was this is a guy who had a really controlling, boring wife who finally died. He's relieved to be rid of her and happy to just have this job and be able to go home at night and not have to talk to somebody.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, I mean, I think that the older male characters that I understand are like that guy and like the narrator of The Beach Boy. Yeah. Who's also, I've never made this connection. He's also an older man who has worked diligently all his life to provide. This guy lives in New York City. And his wife dies all of a sudden, and then he kind of has a nervous breakdown and like understands that his life has been sort of meaningless, and goes on this adventure to...
But he discovers that he didn't really know who his wife was.
Yeah.
Do you think that happens a lot?
When someone dies?
No, that people live together for decades and then suddenly realize, wow, the person does a thing and you just think, wow, I never knew who this person was.
Well, that happened to my parents.
Yeah.
So that seems...
Can we have a show of
very
hands
real.
here? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. The No Place for Good People, that character is the one character in the book who seemed really contented and had peace of mind. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
One of the most amazing things about your writing is your powers of description. Mm-hmm. Do you keep notes about things, or just when you sit down to write, you can sum it up and describe the way a person's skin looked in a certain light, in a bar, in a... You know. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm actually not a very visual person. Mm-hmm. And, there's tests that you can take online to test your visual sensitivity. Mm-hmm. I have really bad eyesight. I don't wear glasses. I don't like wearing glasses. I don't like being able to see myself clearly in the mirror or see other people clearly from up close. I like the world being somewhat two-dimensional. Like, you guys are just this blurry mass, and sometimes I can see somebody scowling or frowning. That seems safe and understandable to me. So I also don't have a very good visual memory because of that. Like, I don't,
So where do you get all the...
Well, I use my imagination. And I think that's what happens when you have some sort of sensory defect, Yeah. I mean, Beethoven went deaf and wrote his most amazing symphonies.
Yeah.
Not like I'm Beethoven, but yeah. I mean, when you have some sort of defect, you end up compensating. So
that's interesting.
Describing things visually for me is really fun and feels like playful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today you were on Michael Silverblatt's show, Bookworm, and you made this comment: "We love to hate people." Do you think that's true?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what's at the root of that?
Ego, self-entertainment.
You think it's entertaining to hate others?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it's like fodder for the mind. What are reasons to hate somebody?
Yeah.
I mean, like, Donald Trump is so fucking fascinating. There's so many reasons to hate him.
Yeah.
You can talk about him for hours.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I think it's just part of human nature.
Is that part of... There's a story in here called Slumming. It's about a very intelligent, sort of sophisticated woman who buys a summer home in this completely white trash town and goes there every summer and just gets high and looks at these people around. What's that story about to you?
It's about the privilege of displacement and getting to feel like you're better than someone else, and when you're a stranger in their community because you haven't had to deal with what they've had to deal with.
Yeah.
And it's also about New York City and what that city does to people's psyches, which I think is just totally insane. I mean, I can spend like 2 hours in New York before I want to kill myself because I'm not like rich or pretty enough or famous or successful enough.
Yeah.
And it feels like a drug. And I think I lived in New York for like 10 years. And it took years to understand why that had been so fucked up for me. You're totally disconnected from nature. You're totally entrenched in this like underground system of I don't know, consciousnesses butting up against each other on the way to something important. And it's very stressful. And so, like, Slumming is about this woman who thinks that she's better than everybody else because she lives in New York City.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really her only advantage.
Yeah. She's kind of, I think, the least sympathetic character in the whole book.
Yeah, she's terrible.
Yeah, because particularly at the end when there's the pregnant girl who's really in a state of duress, and she has no compassion for her at all, none.
Yeah, so this pregnant girl shows up at this woman's summer house to offer to clean it because she's just trying to make some money, and she ends up falling and having a miscarriage. And this woman sees her bleeding and does nothing.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it's just totally gross.
Nothing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's bad. She's bad. Okay, then there's a story, The Weirdos, about a couple where this woman is with a guy that she knows is a complete idiot, childish narcissist, and yet she desires him.
Mm-hmm. Can't relate to that.
Yeah, who can't relate to that? Yeah, okay. I guess that's all we have to say about that. Yeah. So, okay, nothing ever happens here. She's gonna read something from this. I don't know how long you want to read, but you could start with, she was the landlady.
Okay.
And if you want to continue, skip Bob Sears and continue over there.
Okay, I'll see what... Okay, so this is Nothing Ever Happens Here, and I think a lot of people haven't read this because it wasn't published in America. And actually, I wrote this... This was inspired by the first place I ever lived in LA, which was in Hancock Park. I rented this room from this woman who was a gossip columnist named Janet Charlton. She was awesome.
Oh, I remember.
She was really famous.
Yeah.
This bizarre series of connected people got this room for like $700 bucks a month, and this one story, like mid-century modern, weird house that I never even went into. It was just like this kind of like concrete square that I lived in for several months. It was completely miserable. There was green carpet. Anyway, so I wrote this story about this young kid from, where is he from? Nevada or something?
Yeah, from Utah.
From Utah. Yeah. And it takes place in the late 80s, and he moves to LA to be an actor. So, anyway. Okay. My landlady's name was Mrs. Honigbaum. When I lived with her, she would have been in her late 60s. She wore a short, dark blonde wig and large gold-framed eyeglasses. Her fingernails were long and fake and painted pink. Her posture was stooped in the shiny quilted housecoat she wore when she walked around. Usually she sat behind her desk in a sleeveless blouse, her thin, spotted arms swaying as she gestured and pulled cools from a tooled leather cigarette case. Her ears and nose were humongous, and the skin on her face was stretched up toward her temples in a way that made her look stunned all the time. Her makeup was like stage makeup, or what they put on dead bodies in open caskets. It was applied heavy-handedly in broad strokes of blue and pink and bronze. Still, I didn't think she was unattractive. I had never met a Jew before, or anyone intellectual at all, back in Utah. Awful. Okay. Mrs. Honigbaum rented rooms in her house for $45 a week to young men who came to her through a disreputable talent agent, my agent. $45 a week wasn't cheap at the time, but my agent had made the arrangements, and I didn't question him. His name was Bob Sears. You want me to skip that part?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bob Sears had said I'd need a headshot. So before I left Utah, my mother drove me to the mall to have my portrait taken. I had a lazy, wandering eye, so I wasn't allowed to drive. He's like 17 or something. She drove me resentfully, sighing and tapping her finger on the steering wheel at red lights, complaining about how late it was, how hard she'd worked all day, how the mall gave her a headache. I guess in Hollywood they have chauffeurs to drive you around and servants to make your food, she said, and butlers to pick up your dirty underwear. Is that what you expect, Your Highness? I'm going to Hollywood to work, I reminded her, as an actor. It's a job. People really do it. I don't see why you can't be an actor here, where everybody already knows you. Everybody loves you here. What's so terrible about that? Because nobody here knows anything, I explained, so what they think doesn't matter. Keep biting the hand and it might slap you across the face one day, she said. Boys like you are a dime a dozen out there. You think those Hollywood people will be lining up just to tie your shoes. You think you're so lucky. You want an easy life. You want to roller skate on the beach. Even the hairs on your head are numbered. Don't forget that. I did want an easy life. I looked out the window at the short little houses, the flat open plains, the sky purple and orange, blinding sparks of honey-colored light shooting over the western mountains where the sun went down. Nothing ever happens here, I said. You call fireworks over the reservoir nothing? How about that public library you've never once set foot in? How about all those teachers who I had to beg not to fail you? You think you're smarter than all them? Smarter than teachers? No, I answered. I knew I wasn't smart. Being an actor seemed like an appropriate career for someone like me. Maybe I'll end there.
Okay. What struck me about that story is you really seem to love the two main characters.
Well, they are having such a fun, weird romance.
But but they're so innocent completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nothing ever happens between them. There's an old lady in a wig and a young hot guy with a lazy eye who doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
And she's kind of a mother and kind of a savior and also kind of a know-it-all and an insider, and because she's a gossip columnist.
But they're very tender with each other and very appreciative of each other.
I think they're both lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody in this book is. Is there anybody who's not?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Let me see. A Better Place, the last story, is like a terrifying fairy tale to me, almost like science fiction. It's a very unusual story. It's different from pretty much everything else in here. What was the genesis of that story?
That was the last story I wrote for the collection, and when I wrote it, I knew that the collection was over. And I wrote it after a break from writing all the other stories. And it's definitely, you're right. I mean, it's written in a really different register. It's written in a kind of a no time, no place, although it feels slightly Eastern European.
Very Brothers Grimm to me.
Yeah, a little bit. And it's definitely the most personal story. It's about a young girl and her twin brother. And the girl and her brother have always felt misplaced in this world. So they have this theory that they're from a better place. Like they originate from somewhere else, and that's the better place. And the only way to get back to that better place is either to die or to kill the right person. And if you kill the right person, a hole will open up in the ground, and you can jump through it and get back to the better place. And so I think in that sense, it is kind of like sci-fi. But it's written mostly from the perspective of the girl. And she's much more ambitious about getting back to that better place. And it really is a story about me and my brother. And like the love of a sibling for a sibling, and feeling not at home in your own family, and the kind of rivalry and attention that can happen when you love somebody and you're stuck in the same shitty situation. And for me, it's a story about the decision to either go back, to leave, or to stay because you're tied to somebody that you love in this world. So it's like, do we change because we need to and want to for selfish reasons, or do we stay and negotiate because we want to be attached and in love? And that for me ended up being the essential question for me as the author of the collection. Like, am I willing to move on, or am I going to stay in this shit just because it attaches me to something?
Very good summary.
Well, thank you.
On that note, let's take questions.
Okay. Yes.
When you write a story, when you're preparing to write it, do you have kind of an idea, like an outline in your head of the whole thing? Or do you start with a particular incident and then kind of work around that, or some other?
It's always different. Sometimes I have an entire story that I want to tell and I know it from the beginning. But usually I have no idea what the story is when I start writing. It's really just a voice or a sound that I hear, and I kind of put words to it and keep looking at it and listening to it, and it starts to tell me what the story is and reveal itself. And it's mostly just sitting there and watching and paying attention and letting my hands do the typing and then thinking afterwards and trying to look for patterns and understanding what the story actually is. So to answer your question, usually I have no idea. Very occasionally I have a complete idea. And those are always the hardest stories to write, when I think I know what it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Any other questions?
When you're writing a character or trying to, figure out the arc in which that character is going to go, I feel like a lot of times especially today, we are writing in the perspective of somebody that doesn't, hold their own values, or, we're not necessarily writing by ourselves, or, creating somebody who, thinks and I guess by where I'm going with this is, a lot of your characters are problematic in one way or another, and, how do you decide, how do you decide, what is, I guess, problematic enough that you want to write down, but not enough to cause controversy? I don't know if I'm making sense, but...
No.
Okay, let me rephrase this.
Okay.
When you're writing a character, because you had said once that somebody had said that in Eileen, she wasn't a likable character, but you had said that you're not here to write likable characters, you're here to write people, and a lot of people aren't likable. So, especially in Homesick for Another World, none of the characters are especially likable, but, that's, I think, what stands out. Do you set to write characters that are inherently flawed, or do you just kind of, like you said, when typing, do you just let that navigate, or do you, intend to make these characters, as flawed as they are?
Well, I think everybody is flawed. I mean, I don't know what a perfect person is supposed to be. And I think in order to set a story in motion, there needs to be something wrong. Or else why bother writing the story if everything is fine? That's so fucking boring. So, I think I do intend to find the flaw or the weakness in somebody. But I'm always looking for that. I mean, I'm looking for that in you. That's what's interesting about people, is how we're different and flawed, or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, the whole unlikability thing, I think we're almost done with that conversation. I mean, since when has fiction been about liking people? Honestly, I don't know. I mean, that's for like magazine covers or something. There's no story in liking someone. I mean, I don't know. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Yeah, it does.
But, you asked about controversy. I mean, I don't give a shit about controversy. The people are going to create their own controversy. People call me to do interviews and ask me what it's like to be a Muslim American. I'm not even Muslim. You know what I mean? It's like, you can have your own ideas. Yeah. Yes?
McGlue was such a specific man in such a specific place, and it was just so cool to me to read. But could you talk a little bit about, like, did he have to be in that place, or could McGlue have been sort of a protagonist in any of your stories? You know what I mean? Like on the ship and being punished and...
That's a really good question. I have no idea. I mean, I don't know how I would have written a book like McGlue about somebody like that, set in another time, in another place, in another circumstance. So I think that's kind of what the book is.
Yeah, totally.
And it was inspired by a true story, and I don't think I could have conceived of it any other way. It just the main facts of who he was and what had happened to him came to me through reality, and then I just wrote it, channeling what I felt he would have been thinking and saying to himself during that experience of being held in this ship after murdering the person that he loved the most. Yeah.
You should summarize. McGlue is an amazing book. If they have it here, you all should buy it. Summarize for them what McGlue is.
So McGlue is it takes place in 1851. It's about this 20-something guy named McGlue, who's from Salem, Massachusetts, comes from a broken family and is a terrible alcoholic, decides to run away one day and meets this guy named Johnson, who's sort of this valiant figure, and Johnson sort of saves him from his descent into nothing. And Johnson's from a better family, and they go to New York City, and so it's like, you can imagine mid-19th century New York, and they find jobs, get on a ship, whatever. But the book is really about being inside this guy's head, and it opens in the port of Zanzibar right after McGlue has murdered Johnson. And he's done it in a drunken blackout, having cracked his head open after jumping off of a train several months later. It's a lot about the way that the mind tries to piece things together when it's broken, and he can't really understand what has happened. He's just killed this guy, and he can't accept it until 100 pages into the book. And it's really like a story about, it's a romance, basically, between these two men, and how this guy who can't accept who he is, I mean, whether you want to call him homosexual or not, it's really not about that. But it's a romance, and in the end, he ends up destroying the thing that he loves.
It's a magnificent book. Yes.
The language in McGlue seems so specific and from a world and a mind and a time. And I'm wondering where you got that language from, if you read literature from that time period, or if it just fit with like the feeling tone that you were following. You said you described it as channel.
I had probably read literature from that time period, but I didn't do any literary research. What I did do was read a lot of periodicals from that time, just to get the, we call things by different names now than we did 170 years ago, whatever. So I did do that, but the language of McGlue's thinking is it is sort of antiquated, but it's also something else, And for me, it was mostly that something else, and then just guessing at the antiquated stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an amazing thing. You would describe like the cargo on a ship in such detail, and I would think, God, where did you figure that out?
Well, yeah, I did. I did look at a lot of old newspapers from 1850. Yeah.
Yes.
If you when you were writing story do you always have the sex of a character like determined, or if you ever flip-flop somebody, or is that ever?
Not yet.
Clear?
I have not flip-flopped yet. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think some of the stories at the beginning, at the genesis, could have gone either way, and then at some point I make a decision about the gender of the character, and I don't know. Sometimes I think I always make the easy decision. Like if it's somebody I want to make fun of, I choose a man. And if it's somebody that I want to dig into and find disgust in personally, it's a woman. I mean, that's just about me. Yeah.
How do you decide if a story or a novel is finished?
When I'm done working on it.
Like when you're over it?
Usually I know it's done when I'm the most in love with it. And like I can't handle it anymore. And I need to show it to somebody else. But that usually happens right after I'm over it. And then I'm over it again later. Yeah, it's like a, bipolar relationship. But I don't know, are you a writer? Is that why you're asking that question? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. When is anything ever over? It's over when it's published, I guess. Because even after you've submitted it to be published, you're still changing it, So.
Having observed her process, she just finished a novel, and I remember in December she said, it needs 6 more months, and then a week later I got an email, I finished it.
Yeah, it can be unpredictable.
Yeah.
Anything else?
What's your daily writing process? I mean, do you like to write in the morning, and do you like to write 6 hours straight, or just an hour, or?
Usually I write for 5 to 10 minutes at a time, and I just quit smoking. So this is a problem. I'll always need something to interrupt the process, because I very quickly get overwhelmed and feel like I'm going crazy. So I have to get up and do something. But I basically, when I'm working on something, I'm working on it most of the day for 5 to 10 minutes with 20-minute breaks. Yeah. Yep.
What are you reading?
What am I reading? I just started a book by Shirley Jackson, who people compare me to a lot, and I've never read anything by her. And I was asked to write an introduction to a new, or maybe not new, whatever, newly republished collection called Dark Tales. So I started reading that. I have to say, I totally don't understand why I'm compared to her at all. But yeah, that's what I'm reading. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Christine. Thank you, Ottessa.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.